Thank you for taking this moment to breathe and to listen to what can change your life forever. My name is Ragnar Zinikas, and I'm the founder of Starpreneur TV, How to Dominate the Decade talk show, World Women Conference and Awards, the creator of Coral Desk, the coach of the Changemaker, and the co-author for the book From Zero to Success. My mission is to empower through education. And thank you for taking this time today. And thank you for investing in your personal growth by doing so. Today, it is my distinct honor to bring to you Dr. Steve Taubman. He is a best-selling author and world-class speaker who has dedicated his life to showing people how to thrive through their challenges. He has written also books. He's going to tell us everything that he has been up to. And ladies and gentlemen, please help me to welcome Dr. Steve Taubman.
So Ragnar, what a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Hi, that was pretty well done. And most people really botch my name a lot worse than that. So now I'm gonna have to tell you everything I've done recently. How much time have we got?
Well, tell us your stories. Why did you start to do what you're doing, and what is really your passion and purpose in life?
That's a great question. You know, over the course of time, it's evolved and it's changed a little bit, but it's always sort of been founded in the idea that I'm very strongly committed to helping to transform people and help them believe what's possible for themselves and get past their own mental barriers to success. So I started out back many years ago with a chiropractic practice. I was doing physical medicine, sports medicine. I had the largest sports medicine practice in Vermont for a number of years. And it was fascinating. It was great working with athletes because they're peak performers and they want to be as good as they can be. And when they come to see me, they're coming to me for something that's stopping them from succeeding, usually an injury. But in the process of working with those people over time, I came to realize that curing an injury and helping them heal was only part of what they were looking for. What they really wanted was to be limitless. They wanted to be able to break through whatever was blocking their success. And for pretty much everybody, certainly all of us, the difference between good and great is up here. And so it became very clear to me that I needed to jump to a new level in the world of healing, and I needed to help people start using their minds more effectively. And so that led me into an inquiry into how the mind works and what is it that produces happiness, success, health and well-being, prosperity, all of which, by the way, come from the same seed, right? They all come from a place of understanding and being able to connect with our own essence and being able to quiet our minds. And most of us in our society, as you know, right now, are very noisy up here. There's 1,000 things going on up in there while we're trying to accomplish what we want to accomplish. And so I thought, what can I do with the mind that I'd already done with the body? As a chiropractor, what had I been doing was removing interference, removing blockages so that the body could heal itself. It's all about communication, right? Ever since the first amoeba split, and there were two little amoeba, now the entire game was whether they could talk to each other. And now that we're 30 trillion cells, that's a lot of talking, and that's a lot of information having to get from one place to another. And if you look at health from a holistic standpoint, everything has to communicate with everything else. Well, that's also true from a psychological standpoint. It's true from an organizational standpoint. It's true from a world standpoint. Everything is holistic. Everything is about the interaction of the parts. So as a hypnotist, I started studying the things that we tell ourselves without realizing that we're telling them to ourselves. It's the domain of the subconscious. And for many years, I started writing books on the topic. My first book was called Unhypnosis, wow, because I realized that we're all walking through life hypnotized, right? We're all walking around like kind of half awake, sleepwalking through life, programmed, and therefore less effective than we could be.
So you started to get to the bottom, like why the movie of Matrix was really done and what's going on in a bigger picture. And
yeah, are we living in the Matrix, right? I know. And it's funny because in the Matrix, you know, when he's able to like do one of those, and the bullet goes on by. That's kind of what we do, right? What we're doing is we're teaching you how to see life coming at you, but develop that slow-mo version of it to be able to respond appropriately without going into instantaneous reaction. Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, said between stimulus and response, there's a space, and in that space lies our freedom. So if you were Viktor Frankl, you were in a concentration camp. The stimuli were intense. It was torture. It was working people to death. It was starvation. Those are stimuli, and the automatic response that you might expect would be hatred, a feeling of defeat, a feeling of just giving yourself away. That's not what he did, right? What he did was he said, "I refuse to let you in here." And so the stimulus would come and he'd witness it, he'd process it, and then he'd respond as appropriately as he could under those circumstances. And that's what allowed him to survive and thrive.
So there's, I think there's endless number of books which talk about the mind and mindset and all of that. What would you say what's the secret sauce of your method, or what have you done or seen, or the tweak that Steve has, and this is what really distinguishes you as for example in your professional life?
Lovely question. So often when we teach mindset management and when we teach people success principles, we operate on a 3-level pyramid, where at the very top of the pyramid are the results. If you want to achieve better results, if you're completely unconscious and you have no understanding that you've got anything to do with your results, then all you do is you complain that you don't have the results you want. But if you're a little more conscious, then what you do is you say, well, I'm not getting the results I want, I better take different actions, right? So different actions produce different results. So the next level down on the pyramid are my actions. My actions are the foundation for my results. But what's the foundation for your actions, right? The foundation for your actions are your beliefs, right? What is it that I believe that allows me to take certain actions in perhaps the face of conflict or stress? What keeps me from getting shaken by that? And so exploring beliefs is where a lot of personal development goes. If you read most books, it's The Power of Belief. It's Think and Grow Rich. All of these works that are designed to try to change your belief programming at the level of belief programming. So a typical technique would be affirmations. I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me, right? The problem with affirmations is that you're speaking at a level where you could speak back in the other direction. So for example, I say, I'm awesome. And then my subconscious mind says, no, you're not. I say, yes, I am. No, I'm not. And there's conflict. So what I've added to the formula, and I'm not saying that I'm the only one who's explored this, but I think that the area of emphasis for me is on the next level of the pyramid that doesn't get addressed very often, which is the level of presence. How founded are you in the moment, in the here and now, in being able to achieve silence inside, so that you have a place to stand when you observe your beliefs? So you stand in your beliefs to modify your actions, you stand in your actions to modify your results, but where do you stand to modify your beliefs? You have to stand in presence. You need to be able to quiet yourself. So this is where mindfulness practices become very valuable. Meditation, present time consciousness, washing the dishes as if each dish is the most important thing you've ever touched, right?
So we are going more on the emotional side of it. So trying to figure out the connection with our head and with our emotions, and really having I think not the emotions, but the feeling that even to be still, we need to really feel it with every single stem cell.
It's organic.
That is really happening,
Yeah, we're talking at a very granular level, a very organic level. And interestingly, over the course of the time that I've studied this concept of presence, from having done deep meditation practices and various other things, is that I've come to realize that what we think of as emotions, right, is really just sensations that we add a thought to, right? So I often say fear and presence can't coexist. You can't be highly present and afraid at the same time. You can feel the energy that you would call fear, but you wouldn't necessarily think of it as fear because it was just a sensation in your body.
Then I have another interesting question, because just the other day we were talking about what is easier to change, your thinking or your behavior, and what should happen before to have sustainable results. So I think it's a very good question to you. I'm really curious to know what would you answer to that.
That's a good question. So my friend Dan Clark, I don't know if you've come across Dan yet. He's a wonderful, brilliant human being. And Dan says it's easier to act yourself into good thinking than to think yourself into good acting, meaning that we need to take action, right? We need action as a big part of the formula. And what I say is discipline is freedom, meaning that I've got to develop a code of conduct within myself. And this is very foundational before anything else. I've got to decide what I can expect of myself. How will I act and how will I react under certain circumstances, regardless of how I feel or think, right? Because I could say, I'm going to stop eating chocolate. And that's my new action step, is to like open a different cabinet, so to speak. But if I feel like having chocolate, well, then maybe I'll open the chocolate cabinet, because I'm operating based on my feelings, and therefore I'm not changing anything. I could sit there eating chocolate, talking and thinking about how good it would be if I wasn't eating chocolate, but it doesn't change anything physiologically. So in that case, I've got to be counted on to take new actions. Well, how could I take new actions if the feelings are trying to pull me toward the old actions? And the answer is discipline, right? You develop disciplines.
Willpower.
I empower myself to do the right thing, whether I want to or not. And most of us won't do that, right? Most of us just want to be, if you want me to be enthusiastic, if you want me to be excited, you better give me some money or pump me up.
Yeah, I think the muscle of willpower is something that absolutely, regardless who we are or where we are, we always need to have, like any other muscle, we always have to train in order to have it serving us as we need it. So but it's so interesting to talk to you with. But what would you say, from the personal point of view, everything that you do, but how do you really apply that that in business or with entrepreneurs? And I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs today, especially with the times that we are going through, there's a lot of fear for sure. There's no uncertainty for the future. All those, let's say, beliefs which are not good for us. And as you just described, everything which is happening with our minds. What do you see? What is your practice? How do you help the entrepreneurs to really go or strive through the challenges?
My newest book is called Bulletproof, because it's about being bulletproof in the face of all of that, right? It's like, how do you maintain your focus and your drive and your vision while the bullets are flying, the bullets of coronavirus, or the bullets of being out of work or whatever. And the answer is focus. The answer is that we need to take control of where we put our attention. So if you find yourself attending to the things that make you feel miserable and powerless, then you're not going to continue moving in a positive direction. If you start adopting certain states of consciousness, for example, wonder, coming from, I live in a state of wonder, right? Oh, I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder how I could do this differently. Just, that wide-eyed, childlike wonder. The people who are going to dominate the decade, they are wonder-filled, right? They are looking for new ways of looking at things. They're not stuck in the old. And it means that they're much more agile in the face of change. So what, now what? Yeah, I used to do it this way. And I could sit around wishing I could still do it that way and make myself miserable. Or I could say, so what, now what? That's the way it was. That was then and this is now. Under the current circumstances, if I can peel away all of that story I'm telling myself and just be very present, there's still a lot to learn. There's still a lot of opportunity. There's still the interaction of human beings. Maybe it's a little bit further away, but we could still make connections with people, right? We could still, find that common ground. We could find collaboration. And so we start looking elsewhere for ideas. In other words, we start, like, now I'm more collaborative than maybe I used to be. I want to find somebody else to team up with on a new project because it's more fun. It staves off the loneliness, but it also allows me to realize that no matter where I am, there are resources. Right? So that's one answer to your question. Another answer to your question about how do you as an entrepreneur handle situations like this is, and maybe you didn't already do this, but next time, or maybe you do it now for later, we need we need essentially to have what I call our lifeboats. Our lifeboats are the people and the systems that we fall back on when things go awry, right? So I used to fly an airplane. I'm a pilot. I used to have a plane, and whenever, if ever the plane had a problem and I'm flying at 10,000 feet and all of a sudden the engine goes out in the clouds, I don't start panicking and freaking out and then trying to figure out what to do. I pull the visor down and there's a checklist. First check this, then check that, then call the tower, and then do this. So you have a very methodical way of responding to crisis, to uncertainty. Well, what about you? Do you have a methodical way of responding to uncertainty? You're in a state of uncertainty right now. What are the steps that you necessarily need to take? Maybe, one of the steps is we gather the entire team together and we do a brainstorming session. We look for new opportunities or new needs that we can fill. We start streamlining what we're already doing, right? We sharpen the saw.
It's interesting that you took the flying because nothing happens without reasons, no? And yeah. And I was just a few days ago listening to one podcast, and there was also someone which has been flying planes for years and years, and there was a very interesting thought that stayed with me, and now you were actually giving the same sort of example. It's and that comes from more of a preparation, and yeah. He said we always fly before flying. So the same happens, like we go through all the process, we imagine and do the checklists even before we take off. So I think if we put this and what you just described, that could be called the perfect manual for entrepreneurs before you take off, while you fly.
I see a new webinar in the making here.
and in case of emergencies, like you have them. Like you really have the process in a sense, and as you said, systems. In the end of the day, yes, systems. And especially I think now having to deal with a lot of business owners which have never been online and maybe not needing to do the business as systemized as before. So it was easy to sell in a store before, and what if I didn't have anything, and just systems in any ways. I think when we are not used to having the systemized, it doesn't matter whether it's starting from the cashier, ending up with the manuals for the company, then entrepreneurship is going to be very painful for you in every sense. And I think we can apply that from mindset to whatever physical, practical situation it is. So it's interesting. But I think thank you for bringing this example. And I think who you are watching now, if you still do not have your pen and paper in front of you and taking notes, then do it now. Because I think all of those things that we already have discussed are very, very valuable. So don't let them pass you through. And later I will tell you why. So now focus on one thing, just taking the notes, okay? The instruction what to do with them comes later. Okay, I promise you. I promise you, instruction comes later. But just to continue with with Steve. So tell us more. Tell us more about also the Dr. Taubman's system for living a balanced life, free of neurosis and reaching accomplishment. So what's that? How did you come up with that?
Everything that I've ever learned, everything that I've ever taught has started with my own personal inquiry to get sane myself. So I feel like, not only do I preach what I practice, but I practice what I preach. And I've developed a pretty rich understanding of this process at a very deep and nuanced level, because I, at one time in my life growing up, was unhappy, kind of insecure, neurotic, anxious, depressed. And I had a lot of baggage coming up into my life. And what I discovered was that just getting outwardly successful doesn't solve that. If you notice that, like, you could be just, you could be a millionaire and you're still, carrying the same baggage as you did when you were a kid. That has its own set of rules, and it's got its own set of systems. And if in the balance of things, we are much better off pursuing happiness in order to become successful than pursuing success in order to become happy. That's research. That's just reality. We are better off looking at our inner selves. I say, fix the mood before you fix the mess.
Exactly, right? As they say that if you take care of yourself and especially your inner core, then the rest will take care of itself. But we usually start from the other way around. We try to fix the outer world, and then thinking why it doesn't really work. And why my team doesn't really believe in what we are doing in the company, and all of those things. So I think that's very true, that first we need to start with us and everything what is within. You mentioned your book, but where did you see the need there? Like, why, what was the motivation of writing about all of that? Was that just because we ended up in the circumstances as we are now, or was this already started before? Or tell us a little more about that process.
Well, this latest book of mine is called Bulletproof, and it came out about a month before COVID came along. So I think I might have been, what's the word for that? Prescient. Like, I was, seeing the future. I knew just how important this was going to be. When I started writing the book, I was just noticing an overall kind of malaise. People were unhappy. People were stressed out. They didn't know what to do with the stress. I felt that I'd written a great book years ago about how to reinvent your life, so that when people were unhappy and were ready to try something new, to transform what they did for a living, this was a great book for that purpose. It helped you kind of go inside, check in with yourself, understand your own values, beliefs, set goals that were congruent with them, and then move toward your goals, toward your ultimate outcome. But that was not really a message for people who were doing the same job and weren't about to leave. Now, what do we do for them? What do we do for the people who are, they're going to continue doing what they're doing, stay in the same relationship, the same business, the same office, whatever it happens to be, but they want to know how to do it without coming apart. And so that's why I wrote this book. I wanted to respond to that. And so in doing it, I interviewed lots of people who are in very stressful positions in life, who are masterful in those positions. I worked with Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, CEOs in very big companies, ER nurses, police officers, firemen. So people who are, experiencing stressful situations, but are able to really stay focused in those situations. And what were the takeaways? What is, if you have special forces training, what have you been taught that would be useful for anybody else? One of the things that you're taught as a Navy SEAL is embrace the suck, right? Which means, not everything feels good, but those of us who get, upset about the fact that things don't feel the way we want them to feel, what we've done is we've given away our power, right? We say, I can't do anything about this. This is just the way it is. And, my life isn't any good because of this thing. They immediately equate the stimulus with the response. They don't realize there's a space in between. The Navy SEAL says, okay, I've got to swim like 5 miles in rough waters, and it's going to suck. It's going to be painful, and I'm going to be feeling pain the whole way. And I could either just, get upset about that, or I could just embrace that experience. And so now I'm starting to notice more and more, and this is part of what you see in the book, is how the people who are able to expand their capacity to look at any situation and give it an interpretation of their own choosing. And I'll give you an example. When I was, that I do hypnosis, and I was a stage hypnotist. I've done many shows, and one of the shows that I did was a very large school district. There were about 1,200 people sitting in bleachers in a gymnasium, and the people being hypnotized were on the gym floor, and I was putting them under hypnosis. I was speaking very softly, very peacefully, and while I was doing that, there was a janitor pushing a tray of metal folding chairs, a cart, across the floor. And in the middle of my induction, it falls over. And like 150 metal folding chairs hit the ground, and they just make this racket. Now, I could have said, oh, this is ridiculous. I can't believe you just ruined my show. And instead, I just said, and as you hear the chairs fall, you go deeper into relaxation. And they did.
Wow. Because
that's what we have. The stimulus, the loud noise, you would think has to automatically produce distraction or fear. No, it doesn't. Give it a new interpretation. Right? I do the thing that from Wim Hof, I get in the ice cold shower. I just took the ice cold shower just before being on this call. I spent, my whole shower was in the cold, washing my hair, washing my body, soaping up and everything, ice cold water. Now, when I first did it, it was a little torturous. It was shocking. But what I realized was that I have the power to find serenity and peace in the cold, and that my physiology will cooperate with that. And so now I get in a cold shower, and it's still a little shocking for about 30 seconds, and I breathe a little deeper, but then I relax into it, right? I let go of the resistance, because it's usually the resistance, that's the thing you're feeling. It's not the cold you're even feeling. It's all of this. So as you just start letting that go and hope against hope that maybe it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. And that's germane to all of our lives. So when I wrote Bulletproof, I said, number one, choose that you're going to have a point of view, a way of being that is a happy, positive way of being. You're not going to interpret things in a way that makes you more miserable. And you're not going to wait to get what you want. In other words, it's unconditional. Happiness is unconditional. Then you're going to set up that idea of living by a code and living within certain disciplines, because discipline is freedom. And then you're going to learn to focus. You're going to learn to constantly, like with meditation, you're focusing. Your mind might want to wander, but you don't let it, right? And that gives you another superpower. Right. And I think personally that if you're not doing something like that, you're not living your life. You're living on automatic. What you learn from learning to focus is like that there's a whole world that you never even knew existed.
I totally agree. I think my audience is already fed up, because I'm telling them that instead of managing their time, they should start to manage their focus, and they would have totally different results. And that was the game changer for me, because I was like, I'm like micromanaging my time, like how much more granular I can be. And then I noticed that's not what I need to do. Like, it doesn't matter. I can put that and I can force myself to sort of deal with it. But if my mind and focus is not there, I don't have the results. So it was really interesting to find out and really have the ability to even go to that level and understanding that that just I was like, why I'm doing it? I can't focus on it because I'm still in my mind in
Still
the
back to
other
the,
thing because I didn't finish it.
yeah,
So now I'm pushing with my timeline to do something else
yeah.
and trying to have a result with that. It doesn't really work.
Yeah,
So
you're finding your mind is fractured. It's like not working all on the same. Well, if we could stand one more flying analogy, I've got something to say about this.
yeah, sure.
So when I fly from here to Washington, D.C., it's about a 3.5 hour flight from here in northern Vermont. Between here and Washington, D.C., I'm probably on a heading of, let's see, about 210 degrees. That's on a compass, but it's probably 210 degrees. In the entire flight, I'm probably on a heading of 210 degrees about, 10% of the time. Because it's always like this, right? The wind blows, it goes like this, you got to correct back again. So you're constantly making small corrections all the way to your goal. If you're an entrepreneur, you're never going straight to your goal. Always, there's always something else. So why is focus so important? Because if you go like this and you lose your focus, now you're way over here, right? So if you're constantly present, right, you're not being distracted by the past or the future. There's nothing right now more important to me than you, right? So there's, I don't care what's going on out there. I'm with you. And because of that, if you ask me a question, I've got, I'm going to immediately bring my attention into answering that question. I'm not going to be like, you remember in class when you were a kid, and they're like, Mr. Taubman. Oh, I'm sorry. What was the question? You never do that because you're always there, right? And people sense that. So what's the value of focus? The value is you make micro corrections and you're always working yourself back toward where you want to be. You're a much better listener, which means you're also much more aware of opportunities that are passing by that you might have missed otherwise, right? So there are a million reasons.
Especially in the home setting, no?
That's right. I always say that mindfulness is like the perfect strategy for learning how to survive a family gathering. that's graduate school. Getting through Thanksgiving with your family is tough because everybody's crazy and neurotic, and you end up being pulled and triggered into all your old behaviors. So you've got to learn how to be here now, not let that stuff distract you and pull you off course.
Exactly. So what are your 3 recommendations how to dominate the decade?
Well, the first one has got to be to establish strong focus, right? The first thing that's so important to us is we need to realize that the person who is going to be most effective this decade is the person who has the highest degree of laser focus on the outcome that they seek and also on where they are in the moment. So that brings me to the second one, which is called attention to objective reality. Attention to objective reality. If you're sitting here thinking you're better than you are or worse than you are, you're actually wasting your time and everybody else's, because the truth of the matter is that highly successful people operate based on objective reality. They know where they are and where they need to go. Because if you want to set your GPS to get somewhere and you're going to lie to the GPS about where you are now, it's not going to do you any good. So you got to know where you are now, and you've got to be able to accept where you are now. And then the third is to begin to cultivate a state of wonder, right? That sense of, wonder is a remarkable, I'm actually working on a book with, I don't know if you know Jeff Hoffman, the founder of Priceline. Jeff and I are working on a book called The Power of Wonder. Jeff did a great TED Talk about the power of wonder. And he tells that funny story about going to work with his little niece who was pointing out all the things that she didn't understand. And as she pointed them out, he realized neither did he. And one of them was some machine in the lobby of his office that she asked about. And he said, I don't know what it is. And then he finally asked one of his underlings to check out what that machine was. And it turned out that it was a machine that was purchased for a purpose that no longer existed 10 years earlier, but they were still paying a monthly fee on it.
Wow.
So, there you go. So you're an entrepreneur. How much money are you wasting because you're not taking the time to wonder about whether or not everything that you're doing is really moving you towards your goal? And again, what does it go back to? Focus.
Beautiful. Those are very very valid points. So I think that and great reminders as well, because I think unfortunately when we see that all the curiosity that we have when we are children, and which is obviously most of our generation has been just said like, don't ask that many questions, and why are you asking so many questions, and not now, and etc., where we have just killed ourselves, our curiosity, the one that was really driving us when we were truly young. And
Yeah.
I think and even if you see the great stories of any great achiever, then what's the one thing that they have common is the curiosity. They never lost it, and
Yeah.
they always ask questions that it's very fascinating. So thank you for pointing this out, and it's a great reminder again to have. So if someone wants to contact you, if someone wants to follow you, how they can do so?
Well, I'm going to give you a couple of choices based on what you might be looking for or how I might be able to serve you. One is obviously my website, which is just stevetaubman.com. And I'm sure you'll post it so they could, so Steve, Taubman, stevetaubman.com. And there you'll find out a little bit about my speaking and about some of my products, my books and my audio programs and online courses and whatnot. The second is for those of you who want to take a look at this new book and just check it out. You try before you buy, go to bestofsteve.com, bestofsteve.com. And there you can grab a free digital download of the first chapter of the book and end up getting my weekly wisdom tips as well. And, I think I've got a few interesting things to say. And then the third resource I'll share is I've discovered, Ragnar, that everything we've talked about today, that has to do with managing your mindset, quieting your mind, getting focused, not believing everything your mind is telling you, but kind of choosing your destiny. That applies at such a deep level that it even affects our health powerfully, right? So there are certain diseases that are very specifically related to our stress level and our personal, our belief in ourselves, right? You'll find that people with fibromyalgia, psoriasis, asthma, diabetes, even some cancers, you could trace it to, much of it to the content of their minds, and chronic pain, right? And of course, anxiety. So all of those kind of internal maladies that people struggle with can be helped if you can help reframe or reset their subconscious mind. So I've started a website called suggestionhealing.com, power of suggestion to help you heal. So if anybody out there is looking for an opportunity to work with me one-on-one, I do take a limited number of clients. And what I do is I help them to reframe and rescript their inner dialogue. And I see people getting healthier. I see them getting rid of lifelong pain. I see them letting go of anxiety. It's powerful, and it doesn't require drugs.
That's beautiful, because I think soon we have the entire industry how to fix the people that are actually damaged by the medicine.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So beautiful. What would be the message to everybody that heard us today? What would you say, or your recommendation? What should they take out of this interview?
I like to wrap my interviews up by saying, don't believe everything you think. And the reason for that is because we are so addicted to our own beliefs and thoughts. And, if people just take it for granted, the COVID's going on, so of course I'm stressed out. I haven't been for work for a while, so of course things are going to be bad. Not true. It's just not true. But you're believing it, and so you're making it true, right? Don't believe everything you think means you have to disidentify yourself, separate yourself from your brain, from your thinking, right? Who you are is awareness. That's who you are. You're the awareness of everything that's going on. And all those value judgments are just thoughts. So if you find yourself becoming miserable, you find yourself becoming discouraged, you find yourself becoming distracted or angry or irritated, that's all the result of thinking. So don't believe those thoughts. Just notice they are thoughts, right? Be here now, be present. When you feel something, notice it. When you notice you're thinking something, say to yourself, thinking. It's just a thought. Thought.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. And thank you, you that you're watching. Again, so now about the notes. You needed to write them down because they will help you to actually have an action plan. So nothing works without work. We actually need to take action on them. By just writing them down doesn't really help. And so I invite you to become the hero of your own life by taking action on those notes. But you can be the hero in someone else's life. How? By sharing this video, because we never know when someone, for example, has been in chronic pain for years and haven't been able to find a solution. And maybe Steve is the answer. So become the hero of your own life and in someone else's life by sharing the video. I will see you in our next episode. Steve, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It was very interesting. I think we could talk hours and we would still not be there, but I think we scratched the surface of some very interesting topics, and I would love to have you back. And let's see what we will bring to our audience the next time. But thank you very much for joining me today. And you have still all of days ahead of you. Is that correct now? It's in the afternoon. So have a wonderful evening ahead of you.
That's right. Thanks so much.